Two lives who have never met would face the same fate in two different counties by the same four hands of two crooks who escalate from robbery to rape to murder. A crime spree that covers four counties, starting in Sumter, heads to Lake, back to Sumter, to Hernando, and ends in Pasco. In only 3 hours, lives would forever be changed. Freddie Hall, who was 30, steals two guns from his mother, a .38 revolver and a .32 revolver. He heads over to his friend's house, Mac Ruffin, who is 22. They play cards as they brag about two previous robberies they have committed within the past week. They plan to hit another store, setting their sights on the Shop and Go in Hernando County, but they decide they cannot commit another robbery in the same car. They'll need a new one. They drive to Leesburg and park in the parking lot of the Pantry Pride grocery store and wait, watching for the first lady who comes out by herself so they can steal her car. Karol Hurst, who is 21, a former cheerleader at Leesburg High School, who is 7 months pregnant with her first child, a girl she has named Callie Dawn. She exits the store. Hall approaches her with his handgun, forcing her into the vehicle. He drives off as Ruffin follows him. They ditch Ruffin's car in the orange groves, then drive to a secluded area in Sumter County known as Robinson's Bluff. They promise Mrs. Hurst that they will not hurt her, that they only need her car, and that they will let her go unharmed. Meanwhile, in Hernando County, Deputy Lonnie Coburn, who is 25, gets ready for the evening shift at the Sheriff's Office East Side Substation. Deputy Coburn was a firefighter before he became interested in law enforcement. He was a licensed pilot and loved to fly and lived at the Hernando County Airport. That evening, he radios his sergeant, Sergeant Jeff Duval, to let him know that he was going to be a little late. He was picking up papers from the main sheriff's office in Brooksville and had to gas up his patrol car before he could head to the Sheriff's Office East substation. Sergeant Duval stayed on shift and waited until he heard Deputy Coburn radio in, number 16 Brooksville, I'm 10-8, 1051 to Zone 3. As Jeff Duval writes in his book, The Last Old Southern Sheriff, he had no way of knowing that would be the last time he would hear number 16 again. Meanwhile, Hall and Ruffin are moving Ruffin's car to Peterson Park in Pasco County. While there, Ruffin removes the groceries from the trunk of the stolen vehicle and places them in his. He gets back in the stolen car and they head to the Shop and Go in Ridge Manor. Hall and Ruffin enter the Shop and Go with the intention of robbing it. The manager noticed them because they went back to the toy section and were just piddling around. An off-duty clerk came in and the manager asked her to stay while she got caught up stocking milk and beer. When she finished, she took the trash out and noticed a car parked in the open field next to the store. This is a very secluded area, and the Sheriff's Office East Side substation is across the street at that time. She watched the guys and noticed they had mud on their boots, and a customer told her that they were the guys that had robbed that other store in Brooksville the previous week. She asked the off-duty clerk not to leave to stay there with her. The manager was able to call over to the sheriff's station as the off-duty clerk rang them up, selling them a teddy bear and socks. She reaches Deputy Coburn at the substation. When Deputy Coburn hangs up, he tells his fellow officer, Deputy Mills, who was on dispatch duty due to an eye surgery, that there are two guys at the Shop and Go planning to rob it. Deputy Coburn went outside, got in his patrol car, and drove over to the Shop and Go. He didn't radio in to let Deputy Mills know he had left the substation or that he had exited his patrol car at the Shop and Go. Deputy Mills radioed him 3 or 4 times and he did not answer, so Deputy Mills stepped out the door and looked across the street and could see the deputy's car at the Shop and Go. No one was around it. Deputy Mills turned to walk back into the sheriff's office and the phone was ringing. It was the manager from the Shop and Go. She said she heard gunshots out back of the store. At the same time, Deputy Coburn, badge number 16, radioed dispatch that he had been shot. The suspects fled into Pasco County in the stolen vehicle. As the chase for the killers pursued, one officer passed the suspect's vehicle and turned to give chase. Ruffin, who was in the passenger side, fired at the pursuing deputy's vehicle with the Deputy Coburn's service weapon. As they continued to flee, others joined in the chase. The suspects ditched their vehicle and headed out through the orange groves on foot, running down a railroad track that led them to Lykes Pasco Packing Plant in Pasco County, Florida. Shortly after, they would be apprehended, Ruffin first, then approximately 30 minutes later, Hall. Deputy Lonnie Coburn was pronounced dead at 9 p.m. The autopsy would show that Deputy Coburn was shot twice and one of the bullets entered into his upper left lateral chest wall in the opening between his underarm and the vest. In their separate statements, both suspects give pretty much the exact story. The only difference is they blame one another. Ruffin did admit to shooting at the deputy during the pursuit. Hall admitted to stealing the car. In the murder of Deputy Coburn, they say they changed their minds about robbing the shop and go because too many people were there. When they walked outside, Deputy Coburn was there holding a shotgun. He tells them to drop the bag, get up against his car, and spread him. He begins searching Hall, who has his gun tucked in his black rubber boot. Hall grabs the deputy and a struggle ensues. According to Hall, it was Ruffin that shot Deputy Coburn with his own service weapon. They then fled in the stolen car they had stolen in Leesburg. Detective Bishop, in Hall's statements, asked, "In what car?" He stated, "That lady's car," and Detective Bishop said, "The car you stole." Hall replies, "Yes." Detective Bishop asked, "Where is the lady?" and Hall replied, "She is dead." Hall rode with the detectives to Robinson Bluff in Sumter County to show them where her body was, laying face down back there in the pine bushes. They both admitted to raping her. When they were ready to leave to go rob the store, they discussed what to do with her. She begged them not to kill her and even offered to get them $20,000 from a rich relative so they wouldn't have to rob anymore. They took the only dollar she had in her purse, her checkbook, and a butane lighter with her husband's name engraved on it, Benjamin Hurst, and her watch. They tore one of her sleeves off her shirt, planning to tie her up. She begged them not to kill her and reminded them that they had promised they would let her go. According to their confession, she was hit on the back of the neck with the pistol, fell to her knees, and was shot in the back of the head. The autopsy report would state that she had bruising on her chin, abrasions on her right shoulder, 4 abrasions, and 2 contusions on the back of her neck. A contusion on her right nipple. Cause of death was a bullet entering the back of her head and traversing her brain. Both Hall and Ruffin were convicted of the murders of Deputy Lonnie Coburn and Karol Hurst. They were both sentenced to death for Lonnie Coburn and Karol Hurst. However, later both their death sentences for the murder of Deputy Lonnie Coburn would be converted to life, with the courts claiming there was insufficient evidence that it was premeditated. Ruffin's death sentence for the murder of Karol Hurst was reduced to life. The courts would say, in reference to a previous case, Edmond v. Florida, which the court said applies to Ruffin. Concerning Ruffin, the death penalty is inappropriate. Ruffin was 22 years old with no significant history of criminal conduct prior to robbery, kidnap, and the slaying of Miss Hurst. While the records indicate that he developed less than praiseworthy traits and willingly participated in the robbery, abduction, and rape of the victim, his uncontradicted statements claimed that he did not actively participate in the homicide. There is no evidence that Ruffin took life, attempted to take life, or intended to take life. In Edmond, the United States Supreme Court clearly declared that the death penalty is inappropriate for one not involved in the taking of a life. Hall got his death sentence for Miss Hurst reduced to life based on an IQ test, which he had filed previous times, and his fate still remained with the death penalty. However, this is what the Supreme Court in 2014 did 36 years later. He has been able to appeal after appeal to courts longer than any of his victims even got to live their life. This is what the Supreme Court decided. Florida seeks to execute a man because he scored a 71 instead of a 70 on an IQ test. That is not correct. They want to execute a man because he is a murderer, and that is what his sentence was. And they go on to say, Florida's rule is in direct opposition to the views of those who design, administer, and interpret IQ tests. By failing to take into account the standard error of measurement, Florida only contradicts the test's own design, but also bars an essential part of a sentencing court's inquiry into adaptive functioning. Freddie Lee Hall may or may not be intellectually disabled, but the law requires that he have the opportunity to present evidence of his intellectual disability, including deficiency in adaptive functioning, over his lifetime. Florida's law contravenes our nation's commitment to dignity and its duty to teach human decency as the mark of a civilized world. The judgment of the Florida Supreme Court is reversed and the case is reprimanded for further proceedings not inconsistent with this opinion. So it goes to another court and he ends up getting his death sentence converted to life. So basically, the value of Karol Hurst's life and that of her baby was reduced to a number.